guess we'll call to order at 5:37 p.m. The chair of the committee is not able to be present this evening.
Can we, I don't know who, I know Porter's here and I know Jim was here and Andrew, but I mean, how many people are
Do I need to make you a co-host?
in our current view?
Yes, if you don't mind. So we have 6 or 7 commissioners? Oh, sorry.
I don't know, that's what, from this screen, I can't see who's there, so I didn't know.
We should have Mary, Commissioner Winston, Commissioner Canada, and Commissioner Holcomb are showing, and
Yeah.
Commissioner Brink.
Just the screen here in the room wasn't set up, so only like one person was showing, so.
Now I got it fixed.
Now we can see.
So our chair, Mr. Johnson, wasn't able to make the meeting, but we had a couple of things on the agenda from staff, a couple from our commissioners, and then development thresholds I have first because I wanted to first make sure, and I meant to do this last month, but wanted to check in with y'all and make sure I understand what that means and how staff can support that. I know I have a couple of items for the commissioners to kind of comment and give some feedback on relating to use units. We're seeing kind of pretty consistently, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but we're seeing occasionally and maybe with increasing frequency the need for conditional use permits for business licenses, not just for short-term rentals, as Jesse described, but the RO zoning district has some conditional use permit requirements for some of the businesses that want to go in those zoning districts. And so something that current planning highlighted for me and I wanted to bring forward was that we don't currently have personal services in use unit 25. And it might be helpful if I do go ahead and share my screen. So use unit 25 is in our code. Meant to be offices, studios, and related services. So not really intense uses, but things like medical and dental labs, other supporting services and sales. So that's everything from accountants, attorneys, brokers, engineers, excuse me, to some retail sales, advertising agencies, bail bond, auto parking garage, consultants, data processing, drafting, financial institutions, social and welfare agencies, and artist studios, things like that. Personal services would be things like a dry cleaner or a barber or hair salon. And we think that including use unit 25, including personal services in use unit 25 would remove some of the conditional use requirements where there's a pretty consistent pattern of proving those without a problem. And for example, our RO zoning district, I probably have a little bit more research to do on that, but to me, that's what a development threshold potentially looks at reducing the administrative or application requirement for some of our property owners or our businesses. But if I'm misunderstanding that, I am happy to understand what it is that we'd like to do with this.
Yeah, so the ones that you're showing us are the ones that are by right in use unit 25.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so those are even like, we can pick on whoever set them up, but like some of those are really heavy traffic, funeral home. So why those considered an office and not personal services is like.
They're really, funeral homes in particular are really, you either have a lot of people or not very many people.
Yeah.
So that's a big ebb and flow in terms of customer.
I'm generally in support of making the categories as broad as possible, but that's the perspective I bring to this this job. That usually, if it's not a matter of noxious use, noise, smoke and things like that, even if you want a broad, even to me, it makes more sense to limit hours of operation than to micromanage what the actual uses are, but that's just my perspective. If the concern is these are adjacent to residential neighborhoods or whatever, but.
Well, and maybe that was a little bit of the concern. The RO zoning district kind of comes to mind there, residential office, trying to keep things maybe quiet. But I don't know that personal services, again, looking at kind of dry cleaners, hair salons, barbers, things that are still kind of that small scale, probably not open at all hours, probably open during regular business hours, maybe for a hair salon a little bit later in the evening, but don't tend to have any greater impact than the uses listed.
If I might chime in too, just
Please do.
since this is kind of coming from current planning, some of this is just that we've seen historically every single conditional use permit, at least in the past 2 years, where somebody was requesting a personal service.
Then we always say, why are we looking at this?
We've always approved them, and I think rarely, if ever, have we received public comment on the items. So that's part of also what's playing into current planning's suggestion in this.
Yeah. I'm all for that. I can't speak for everybody else, but.
Well, is anyone else in favor or against? Wants more information?
What category are personal services currently in?
So I might be able to speak more fluently on that written.
Please
I don't mean to overstep.
The expert.
But yeah, so personal services tend to fall in, you see them in 12A, 12B, 15, and 16. So those uses tend to be more like shopping, commercial,
Shopping centers,
shopping
etc.
centers, that type of thing, but they're scaled based on size of building and size of the retail space, basically. So where this actually, if we really want to get into some of the nuance of this, where this really comes up is actually in chapter 164.01. There's a discussion in our code about accessory commercial uses in association with the RMF zoning districts and the RO zoning districts. And it specifically calls out use unit 25 as being an acceptable commercial use in those districts. But it does not include those uses such as dry cleaners, childcare facilities, hair salons, or dry cleaners. And staff truly feels that if anything is compatible with a residential office use, it would be those exact 4 things. So having access to those within those 2 zoning districts in those accessory commercial uses, we think is extremely compatible. So it's a portion of our code that we identified recently would potentially could use some cleanup.
Commissioner Winston?
Yeah, my internet got a little sketchy. So the question here is, shall we add personal services as a use unit into RO? Is that right?
Personal services listed under allowed uses in use unit 25, which would kind of allow it in in a couple of the different zoning districts. Where we're having some problem because you need a conditional use permit for stuff that seems to be usually kind of a very straight shot through to approval and very little public comment. But I could do some additional research on what that's looked like over the past couple of years and kind of report on that. I think that might be a good addition to a staff report to get some background, just to be sure.
Well, my feeling is that if we have, historically, we have had a lot of work to do in order to approve these sort of things, and then we've never had a problem with them, and we've always approved them. That is the strongest indicator that we should go ahead and make a move like this.
Thank you. Any of our other commissioners have thoughts on this? I think if this is something that we do have support for, we would bring this back with some clarity on some potential language changes to the UDC, so I'll have a chance to see that, maybe a little bit of background on it, and then we can look at bringing it to your regular meeting as a code amendment, if that's the direction it goes, if everybody's okay with that. But if anybody's not comfortable with that, please let us know.
Are there others that we should do at the same time?
Well, we could. So we've been looking at, and Jesse, please correct me if I'm missing something. I think we've been looking at 12A, 12B, 15, 16, and 25, the use units. So we could look at all of those together and see where some adjustments could be made. Or we could start with adding personal services to use unit 25 and get that done, and then kind of tackle the rest of them from there. I have a bit more work to do in understanding how all these are related and how we might best want to make some adjustments to smooth the process a little bit, if you will.
Well, I think along the lines of what Porter just said, if we have a whole bunch of these that need to be looked at and we had some like basic parameters, or like if it does X, Y, and Z, then we should be able to move it. It might be a way to sort of streamline us instead of doing them one at a time and then having to amend the code one at a time, because then that seems like we're going through the process multiple times.
Right.
But that's just one thought. I don't know. It seems like what he just said would be useful. The caveat where I said I'm all for consolidating uses, and if it has to be that in order to do it in RMF whatever, it has to have time parameters, or if you say, well, yeah, a hair salon that's only how many ever square feet can go in here, but you can't come in and do a hair salon that has 25 chairs and therefore has 25 cars. I mean, it seems like it's not so much the use, it's kind of the scale and whether it has side impacts. That's the way I think of it anyway.
I think we've got more to offer there. This is probably the most immediate, clear piece to tackle, and probably is expected to have some. We're probably expecting y'all to see applications related to this exact issue on use unit 25 pretty shortly. So a good time to kind of check the temperature and see if we can start getting some motion on this.
I'd really just kind of, I mean, this is your work, and however, to me, however you want to tackle it is makes the most sense to me. If you want to like take an easy one across the line and grease the tracks or something like that, then do that. But if you want to bag them up and haul them, then cool.
Well, I think I appreciate Commissioner Madden's viewpoint on kind of getting this all done at once. I think there's also how many times I want to explain to myself to council as to why we're doing, didn't we just do this, and maybe doing it all at once has some advantages, so that we're kind of making a more efficient path. But I think we maybe see use unit 25 CUPs maybe a little bit more often than the others. And I'm probably a couple months out from being able to bring y'all a use unit 12A, 12B, 15, and 16 plan. So if you're happy to wait, then we will bring that back as soon as I can put the big picture together, bag them up as you say. If y'all want to go ahead and get one thing knocked out, we can do that too.
Yeah. Well, and if we do the 25 first, it may be that's the way also to kind of come up with a list of 4 parameters or whatever that then could be applied in the other categories.
And I think that would be helpful for me in kind of understanding, how we might want to tailor this to what is needed, so that we get the right oversight without too much process where it's not needed or warranted.
Yeah, I tend to, I think I agree with Commissioner Madden. I think at least what I'm hearing, I'm always in favor of incrementalism. So, if you take one, in this example, you take one, you get all your questions, most of the questions answered, and really chip away at kind of a mold for the rest of them. So I like where you're going, and I think this was kind of an easy one to tackle first to see what parameters we can lay out there.
Thank you.
And then you can say, hey, you're going to see a bunch more of these, but I'll bag them up all together.
Well, or I can come out, well, that last one was so successful that we just decided to do it again. Here's some more places that we found we could do good work. And I think that could, if we were to approach this doing use unit 25 first, I think the rest could be more easily kind of grouped together once we understand and, have a good kind of discussion on the technical aspects of that. Like I said, I can probably bring that back to y'all next month and look at getting it on the agenda, if that's okay.
I think so.
All
The
right.
places I've worked before, I never heard of this use unit concept until I came to Fayetteville, so I don't even know
Same.
where it came from.
Same. We are learning together.
All the planners in the room, same thing.
I've worked a lot of places that I'd never heard of it, but anyway, I'm still trying to figure it out.
So, I think probably a little bit of the timing is me making sure I've got this figured out adequately, since this is new to me as well. All right. Well, that sounds good. Any last comments on that? And if not, Commissioner Canada, looks like he's on. So this is an item on subdivision committee. We think this is kind of fun. We, being the planners, think that this is kind of fun. So in an ongoing effort to streamline your meetings and to streamline the application process, as we see a lot of applications, particularly rezonings and CUPs that can't go on consent agenda. We are just looking at what process improvements we could make that would really benefit y'all as well as staff. And so Commissioner Canada, I think, had worked on this a while back, and we're bringing it back forward. Potential adjustments to subdivision committee. Now, that's a committee that I'm not generally present at, so y'all will have better experience and information than I on how that operates. But I think the concept is to maybe look at what applications go to subdivision committee and kind of what the route for those is, and maybe use subdivision committee in a more limited capacity, and maybe see what could go straight to planning commission, if anything. I think Commissioner Canada was also interested in some additional administrative approval, if certain conditions were being met, et cetera. So Commissioner Canada, I didn't know if you wanted to take this item or if you wanted me to continue.
If you could continue, that'd be great, and then I'll chime in so I can give like my footnotes version of kind of the intent.
That sounds great. So I'll pull up this is the document that I'm working from, and Blake shared this with me, something that he had kind of been working on. We're bringing back some ideas that need to be brought back, kind of refreshed, and so Blake had shared this. This is kind of a draft document that, if I can push the right buttons, I will share with you all. Here it is. Okay, so this is changes to UDC section 166.02, development review process. In our Unified Development Code, we lay out a lot of particulars about application types, what kind of review they are, what their notification requirements are, all kinds of things. And so we also lay out technical, tech plat review and subdivision review, approval and denial criteria. It's very, very specific. So what Blake had been working on were some language edits to our code that would kind of hopefully, and this is where this probably needs a little more look, but hopefully kind of reduce what would need to go to subdivision committee, and then also kind of streamline that meeting. So we're essentially, y'all have a lot of meetings monthly. You've got your agenda sessions, you've got your regular meetings, you've got subdivision committee, and the subdivision committee day and time are a little bit awkward for folks that have jobs that don't allow them a lot of flexibility sometimes. So we're just trying to see what y'all may be looking for as far as ways to process improve and how staff can help support that. The feedback from current planning has been in support of this. I think not having to prepare for one more meeting and write all reports that maybe have to go to subdivision committee and then to the full commission and kind of double the work would be an advantage, certainly for them. On the administrative approval side, Jessie did note, and I thought this was kind of an interesting note, she noted that sometimes it's really an advantage to not have administrative approval available, and only because when our applicants submit, they are kind of locked into a timeline that benefits the applicant. So sometimes things don't go faster for the applicant if they're administratively reviewed, because they don't kind of get on the planning commission agenda where everybody has to review in a certain time period. So it kind of crunches everybody's workload, but it also keeps things moving. And so she sees some advantage to keeping things on planning commission approval. But she does see some real advantages to reducing the meeting reports and preparation that planning staff do. But happy to kind of listen to y'all discuss or see what y'all think of that.
So what I heard you just say is that things that get administratively reviewed don't have a hard clock, and so they drag on.
That can be the case, yes.
Okay, because when I've worked before, when we did things to administrative review, it was like they had a 30-day window, and going through planning commission was what. Anyway, I mean, just every city, I guess, does it a little differently, because I would have just assumed administrative review went faster.
Well, and I think in some cases it does, but in terms of getting to a decision, the public hearing, even when I was working in Georgetown, going to a public hearing kind of kept everybody going forward. And sometimes when it's only administrative review and approval, applicants don't respond to comments as quickly because they're not constrained by a meeting timeline that kind of keeps everybody moving forward.
So it's the applicants as much as the staff.
It can be. But I think that does have a lot to do with internal policy as well, and things that have to make it to a public meeting, I think, are usually given a bit of a priority, just to make sure that happens. So,
yeah, I don't know how to filter this. My frustration of things that go to subdivision and then go to planning commission, and don't ask me for example, is when things come and subdivision, usually we don't necessarily get them that far in advance, and if they do have some kind of design layout and you look, I mean, you don't have a chance to really look at them to figure out what's going on. So that gets frustrating. But the other thing is things that come to us that then we're kind of told you don't really have any discretion. Then I'm feeling like if there's no discretion, why are we even looking at it at all?
And if I could chime in, Mary, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all I had.
That's exactly what inspired me to work with staff on this item. Is we want to, or at least for me, I know that I value efficiency, and I know citizens, developers, everyone would value that along with staff. If there's an item coming before us in subdivision committee that we have to forward to the full planning commission without, I mean, if we can't approve it right there, I'm not really sure why we're even saying it, because what it can look like a lot of times is you had a small handful of planning commissioners just basically get first dibs on looking at an item and putting through their comments, but then it goes to the full planning commission to consider. And I feel that subdivision committee should be used more so to be part of that streamlined process of, if we can approve it, if it comes before us, anything that comes before us in subdivision committee should be something we are able to approve right then and there or deny.
So, and I like where you're going, Commissioner Canada. Is there any way that we could add that maybe if there's unanimous approval at subdivision, then that there's no need to see it at planning commission? Or could we add, I don't know, see the documents earlier and maybe email approval or something to that nature?
Well, that's kind of getting around to I don't know. I'll let Brittany, if you want to take that over. I don't want to step on anything legally because I know certain things do have to go to the planning commission regardless and be considered, but
no, our expert planners bailed on us. I don't go to subdivision committee, so I'm going to have to start going to subdivision committee now. So we may have to get rid of this meeting altogether.
I mean that's where we started. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I understand that, Quentin. And again, I'm a young one on the commission, but I like where you're going because I kind of see that if there doesn't need to be two approvals, if most of the planning commission is in a agreement that this specific project is good, and or we don't have authority to change anything.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm thinking about is when, and maybe it's just when it's really the plan developments or large scale developments, and there's actually like a design component, and there are potential options, etc. You need more than 30 minutes, advance to look at them. And sometimes it seems like if in subdivision we're like, oh, here's some recommendations, here's some things that we think should be done, those kind of scenarios, it seems like it's nice for the subdivision committee to have taken a deeper dive before it goes to the full planning commission. But it seems like there's a whole lot of other stuff that it's really kind of cut and dried, and we're going through this pro forma thing, and then I'm always asking, am I saying I'm recommending this to go to the full commission? Am I recommending this for approval? So I'm still just learning all those ropes. But if you're making recommendations on like conditions of approval, etc., then it does seem like it's more useful to have more people thinking about it than the 3 people who are on the subdivision committee on any given week. Because the other thing is I could see happening is we don't all always agree on everything, is applicants who shall remain nameless gaming the system of like, oh, I don't want to go to a subdivision if Mary Madden is there because I know she's gonna like pick on my design or whatever, and they might say, oh, I'd like to go when Porter's there because he signs off on everything.
And yeah, that's part of it. I mean, there's been definitely times we all don't think the same. And one thing about putting a whole planning commission together of 9 commissioners, is that you have that diversity of thought, and there's different angles to look at things. So I don't see the point of why 3 people should talk to an applicant and make certain recommendations that by the time it goes to the full commission, some people are thinking, why did you make that recommendation? Or I actually don't agree.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have to jump. But I appreciate everybody's time tonight. I'll see you on Monday.
Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I guess, is this issue a workload issue or more of a critical path of getting things through? Because a lot of times you get the packet that night before or morning, and I'll be the first one to admit I cannot read that fast or go that fast. And I know staff has a crunch, and so it's not their fault. Is it a way to maybe move that back a day, or is there other alternatives? Because I think, there's some merit to having consent type of agenda where they've checked all the boxes and it's a pretty clean. But if there's issues with regard to Streamside, the issue with maybe neighbors and constituents having concerns, then there needs to be heard in front of the whole commission. I guess that's what my question is. Do you, everybody on the line, feel that it's a critical path staging issue, or do you feel more it's a workload issue, or what your thoughts are on that?
I mean, Jim, I'm with you in that when the package comes at 9 p.m. and the meeting is at 9 a.m. the next morning, I mean, the ability to have looked at it is really difficult. And so I don't know if that has to do with staff workload. Now there's no current planning folks here. I'll just be honest. I'm kind of surprised how much detail and background sometimes the staff reports have in them. And I don't know if that is, because I can't read that screen, I don't know if that's in our ordinance, the level of detail that they provide, because sometimes it seems like if the staff reports could be an increment shorter, then we could all review them much more quickly and get to sort of the meat of the issue. And I don't know.
That's by convention. And so I'm aware of that one. So, planning commissions by your composition adjust over time. And I think previously in the city, there's been a preference for some real detail on everything. And I think we're in a place that, you know, when you don't have as many applications, and y'all, but I've tracked y'all's applications since 2017. You've had a lot of applications for a long time.
That's what I mean, since I've only been on now like 8 months or 9 months or whatever, and we pretty consistently have so many applications that it's just impossible to read the level of details in the report.
Y'all are breaking records this year almost already, and we're only 7 months into the year. So I do believe that there was a request for a lot of detail in the staff reports previously. I think given the number of applications that are received, the number of staff reports that have to be written, the number of comments that have to be made from urban forestry and engineering and traffic and building safety and fire and planning, all of that together, I think there is a desire to reduce the amount of duplication that might be needed for some projects. Some projects do need a lot of attention. You know, variances sometimes need a lot of evaluation to understand what's the best path for the city. You know, what's the best path in this space. But you know, to y'all's point, some of these things are pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of leeway. So is a lot of detail or a lot of effort needed? And I think we're trying to reassess all of that right now so that we're putting the time and energy where it's needed and not where it's not, which I appreciate Commissioner Canada looking at being strategic about that and kind of maybe doing a bit of a relook at how we do this. They're all constructs. We can always construct them differently as long as state law allows it. So I think a lot of the heft of the staff reports is by past convention and not necessarily by requirement.
So if I can lean in on this one, I've had a lot of items come before subdivision committee that were fairly undercooked, and we get to kind of like go through them and point out things that need to be talked about, that need to be considered, and so I think there's some real value in what we do in subdivision committee. And so the options that I really like are the ability to approve something right then, or say we would like to have these improvements made, or show us these exhibits, or figure this out. And if you can do that before planning commission, then we're going to forward this to planning commission with a recommendation. This is how we do that, and then. I also feel like it might be important that because subdivision committee is only 3 people out of the commission, that if subdivision committee denies a project at subdivision committee, that it's automatic that the applicant can appeal to the full commission. So I guess I'm not really making a lot of suggestions on how to reduce the workload, other than maybe making more of the types of applications that come to subdivision committee to be able to be approved at subdivision committee, which sounds like it might be Commissioner Canada's thrust of the argument of why we might, change things up a little bit. But those are just my general thoughts on the value of subdivision committee, and I think there is a lot to be said about having things come to these meetings and having a pretty tight turnaround times before people get to from subdivision to full planning commission, because it really makes everybody sort of like get going on it and deal with it, and pushing things through, it is nice to have a little bit more time to look at things. So one thing that I would like to add to subdivision committee is it's basically tabling at subdivision committee and saying, hey, come back again, fix these things, do these things. Let's look at this again at subdivision committee and see if we can approve it at the next subdivision committee, if the next group feels comfortable doing that. So in a lot of ways, I think I'm pretty happy with how the system works right now, even though it can be kind of clunky. And then the question about like, shortening reports. The report is basically a form in a way of like, you need to answer these questions for planning, for the planning department, to make sure that everything is considered. And that's the form, the convention aspect of it. And because I think it's pretty easy for whole swaths of things that we need to consider to sort of be dropped and forgotten about if we don't sort of have that format that we have to like look at fire, we have to look at compatibility and all that sort of thing. And for me, reading the reports have gotten faster and faster and faster simply because I know what that question is, and I know what if the answer to that question is unusual, it pops out to me pretty quick. And so part of that is just like having been doing this for way too long, probably, and yeah, that's all I gotta say about that.
I'm kind of on the other side. So kind of what I was going with, Porter, is I see what you're saying of bringing it to subdivision committee and being able to give them your thoughts on what needs to be worked on, or needing to work more time with staff before it goes to full commission. But the way I look at it is, if it has to go to the full commission anyway, yes, they're getting comment, but it's not as if they're getting like all 9 commissioners are going to be at subdivision committee and give their comments, and then we're going to go to planning commission. They're going to subdivision committee to get to present their project. We give a select few of us give comments on that, and then it goes to the full planning commission. So it's adding. I feel like it's using a lot of staff resources, dragging out the process, and there is that chance on the table that depending on what commissioners you get, you might be getting recommendations that other commissioners don't align with. And so that developer might think, okay, you told me to add X, Y, and Z, or you told me to consider, ZYX, whatever it may be. But when I go to the full commission, there might be a handful of commissions that think otherwise, or might say, I would have been fine with or without this piece. And so it's about making that process more efficient, giving them a clear, concise answer amongst the whole 9, if they have to go to, and kind of removing a step entirely, if they have to go to the full planning commission regardless. And that's what my thought process is making the process more efficient and making our answers, wants, needs more clear to the developer, to streamline the process and empower staff to approve things administratively if there are no variances or anything that we have to consider.
I absolutely agree with like the being able to administratively approve more things, because the planning department understands all the general variables and understands what the city wants to see. But I've had so many items come through subdivision committee that really needed some things worked out. And that if they had gone straight to planning commission, they would either be denied because they were just sort of incomplete and not very well thought out from the perspective of the planning commission in general. And I feel like 95% of the time, all of us planning commissioners are going to bring up generally the same kinds of things and that we're going to be looking for, and kind of asking them to hammer this out. And usually it's like connectivity or something like that. And so I feel like the small amount of times that one subdivision committee or another subdivision committee would give an answer that are are quite different from each other is a lot less than the amount of times that we would be getting an item before the full planning commission that hadn't gone through through subdivision committee that that really needed to have some of our eyes on it beforehand.
Yes, and I see what you're saying there, but kind of like back to having having to go to the full planning commission. We still have our process in place where if an item needs more work, we done it often a lot with a lot of items where we table it, tell them what our comments are, and tell them to come back. So the process, what subdivision committee is doing is exactly what we could and do at the full planning commission, and being able to get those thoughts in, and if it is they need to work on that item, we can all give them our comments and they can go back and work on it and come back at the next planning commission meeting. The subdivision committee meeting to do that is just adding a step, and you're getting a smaller pool of planning commissioners versus the full 9 that could be telling you the exact same thing. So that's that for me.
The one thing that I noticed in my experience, and I've only been to like 5 subdivision committees so far, is rightly or wrongly, it seems like maybe it's because of the informality of it. It seems like oftentimes the conversation, the give and take at subdivision is more of a conversation, what's possible, we can ask fire, we can ask engineering, and when we get to the full planning commission, everything becomes much more formal. Yes, we do raise a lot of issues and we can discuss amongst ourselves, but for some reason, I feel like when we're wanting to look at a site plan more carefully and look at connectivity, it seems like we do that, at least when I've been there, subdivision does that sort of more as a conversation and not so much where we're very, speaking only to the chairman and speaking to the staff, et cetera. I don't know, maybe that's just my perception of the meetings I've been to thus far.
Just to say, I feel more comfortable spitballing in subdivision committee.
Yeah, so that's another way, I think, to say more succinctly what I was saying. There seems like there's a lot more, what about this? Oh, have you thought about this? Have you considered that? And I don't know if legally there's any reason that we do that at subdivision, not at full planning commission, but in my experience, it seems like we do.
I'm more comfortable with dumb ideas in subdivision committee.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear me. I have kind of a bad connection.
Yes,
This is Joe.
we can hear you.
I'm on board with my limited knowledge with Commissioner Canada. I think that if we can streamline, I don't know exactly how it looks, but I'm for streamlining any process that we can to make it easier for the applicant to move it along. If I do see there's some level of redundancy for sure in the subdivision before going to the full planning.
Well, I think we definitely still have some work to do to figure out what this could look like. Y'all's comments have been extraordinarily helpful in some of the things that seem to work and some of the things that seem to be less successful. I'm very interested in the comments on timing to review the packets. So in Texas, I'm not gonna try to do that very often, but in Texas, where I'm from, you have to notify and post agendas 72 hours prior to the meeting. So regardless of what meeting it is, you have at least 72 hours to review, even to meet that deadline. And so we don't have that in the state of Arkansas. Agendas don't have nearly the same requirement to be posted or completed. And so that would be something we would do internally, but I think that's well worth a discussion on how we balance some maybe something gives a little here because it adds a little here. I think we want to look at all of that. Commissioners Holcomb and Garlock, whoever wants to go first.
Commissioner Holcomb, go ahead.
I left my hand up. Go ahead.
Okay. I do believe the informality of the subdivision committee gets a lot of things done. Also, I think we've got to remind ourselves that sometimes people come to the subdivision committee meeting, the applicants trying to push something through that they know is kind of borderline or iffy. If we cut out the subdivision meetings, I'm concerned about the extent and the scrutiny of the planning commission meetings, that they may go longer and may not be as effective. If we can, that said, if we can get rid of some of simple administrative things, that's fine. I do think it is a good forum for the neighbors to actually express themselves in that smaller venue. And then again, the one downside that I see is maybe moving it back a day and still keeping the deadline for the planners and the applicants where they are. Because I think there's a lot of positive things that come out of the discussion in the subdivision committee meeting, and I think it does help move along a planning commission meeting. We've been in a lot of planning commission meetings where there's a lot of back and forth and comments from the public, but if there's no glaring problems, we always push it forward to the planning commission, and it's better to have a longer set of eyes on it, and they have the 4 days to read the packet. That's kind of how I feel. I think it plays a good role, and I'm concerned about maybe taking away a little bit of the people's comments and ability to give input in a more comfortable environment for them. Thank you.
Yeah, on that, there's subdivision committee for the public is sort of an opportunity to meet with the developers and get their questions answered in a safe place. Whereas, you know, we used to do this more often, ask the developers to have a meeting with the neighbors and you know, get all their questions worked out and that sort of thing. And that sometimes works, and sometimes it turns into a shouting fest, and people get their feelings hurt and stuff like that. Whereas in subdivision committee, we can kind of have that happen without in a semi-formal way. And it can really help people get a better idea about what's going on, and people can ask multiple questions rather than just once, and we can hammer out an answer in that roundtable format for some of the concerns. And so there's that aspect of it, and then there's the other aspect of it is that I've had items that took 45 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes in subdivision committee where we're just like combing through possibilities, and a bunch of them are not good. They're not possible. They're not going to be on the table. But if we did that during planning commission meetings, we could have items take 2 hours long, just because of the formality of it. And we could go down roads and we could say quite, easily say, oh, this seems like a good idea. Let's end the item. Let's vote on it. When really it's just it seems like a good idea, but we didn't have enough information to realize that it's a bad idea. So, I'm reticent to change what we're doing with subdivision committee meeting, because to me, it's one of the more valuable places to get things done.
Commissioners, in the interest of time and also my need to support another meeting in this room at 6:30 p.m., would y'all mind if we bring this discussion back? I think there's a lot more to it. I did want to get this started and kind of get initial thoughts and see what I could take back to current planning. Make sure that I understood my need to attend a subdivision committee meeting, so I have a much clearer idea of how those meetings are. But
depending what's on the agenda, sometimes they're done in less than 30 minutes, and sometimes they go for 2 hours.
Sometimes they're very long. But I think some of the process improvements that y'all identified for benefit, including getting agendas earlier so that y'all have more time to look at them, and maybe looking at shortening staff reports, I think that's maybe some of the most valuable feedback out of this meeting. So I want to be sure to look at that. We did have an item for bylaws change that was really just a quick update to the commissioners that we had a bylaws change from Chair Sparkman on cell phone use and officers. Staff would like to tack on to that. This will come to you at your August 8th meeting for meeting minutes. We've been in consultation with the city attorney, and rather than having the written transcribed meeting minutes from the video, which are almost verbatim, and take planning staff about a day to do twice a month, we've come to the conclusion it would be legally acceptable for us to have the meeting recording and the vote sheet serve as the official meeting minutes. And so we'd like to propose that change and kind of legal said that would be okay, but you have to get it into your bylaws. So we're looking to bring that to y'all with a very full explanation of why we'd want to do that. And then Commissioner Garlock, I've not forgotten about your presentation, but Sherry would really love to give that herself. If that's okay with you. She was sorry she couldn't be here, but needed to be out of town for family this week. So was hoping that she could give that when she comes back.
I don't think that's good because I'm driving everybody off. There's only 3.
Well, we'll put you at the very beginning of the next agenda.
Only thought around that was as we're planners, we're trying to look to the future, and I thought it was kind of short-sighted when we had an item on West Weddington that was all RSF4, and it's looking like it's going to be just a headache. So I appreciate everybody in the long-range planning to at least look at that. So thank you in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. We have a potential new street section for y'all. We're very excited about what we've cooked up. So thank y'all so much for your additional time this evening and a really good discussion. Let me know if you have any last minute things. We don't have any staff updates tonight, so just appreciate everybody hanging out for another hour and the work that y'all do with us. It's really wonderful. So we'll be back on Monday all together again for for the big production.
Yay.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Everybody, enjoy the show.